Some of you remember how it was not too long ago to go JRPG hunting in the wild. How many of them did you find for a decent price or way below their market price? I bet you found a lot, just like me. Some of us come from a time when most gamers didn't seem to care much for the genre and were only trying to collect the classics. And I'm not talking about only retro RPGs, but also the ones that were current generation back then. Sadly, thanks to reasons we all know very well, the golden age of buying JRPGs galore are long gone. Today, most retro JRPGs, I'd say about 90% of them, retain absurd prices that we either can't afford or are just not willing to pay for. Remember when Valkyrie Profile on the PS1 was selling for $80? And that was crazy expensive back then. Nobody wanted to pay that much for a PS1 JRPG, especially not since most of the others could be found for $30 or less. Remember when a loose card Final Fantasy III on the SNES was $30 and even that was expensive? Those were the good times, my friend. The times themselves have surely changed. They've taken a rough turn for the worst, hurting our wallets more than ever. So is it over? Is retro collecting over for most people nowadays? I'd like to think it isn't, but when it comes to JRPGs, it might as well be. Why? Because unfortunately, JRPG is one of those genres which games never seem to drop in price. Instead, they just keep increasing in value and rarity as time passes. So what is my advice for this situation? What can I do that you can do too if you want to keep collecting JRPGs? Because we like owning them. Sure, a lot of us keep dozens of digital copies out there for one too many reasons, but the truth is, we don't exactly own them, not even if they're already installed in our hard drives. Plus, we just love collecting video games, owning them because they mean so much to us. We feel like by owning physical copies of them, we embrace our passion in a more tangible way, to capture all of those good memories in one physical object. But the reality nowadays is that some of us have been collecting less and less. So what to do in this situation? Well, I'll give you a few pointers that have more or less worked out for me since this whole situation began. When it comes to retro collecting though, I may or may not be in the best position to give advice. I say that because I already own most of my favorite JRPGs on some consoles, games that I paid for way less than what they go for nowadays. But obviously that's cause I've been collecting JRPGs for over 10 years. I think most JRPGs from the PS2 era and below have become rare and expensive already, so it might not be a good time right now to collect them, to simply stop and look elsewhere. For example, it might be a better idea to start looking into PS3 JRPGs or PS4 JRPGs. The majority of those can still be found at reasonable prices, if not for cheap. Sure, new releases nowadays take a long time to go down in price, but trust me, they go down in price eventually. The same can't exactly be said about Switch JRPGs because most of them still retain their physical exclusivity over there, or the Switch version of them is more sought after for being the definitive edition, or the one with all DLCs, or simply because it can be played portable. That's Nintendo for you. Still though, you just cannot compare the price of a Switch JRPG to an SNES JRPG today, now can you? So my first piece of advice will be to focus on the consoles that are cheaper to collect for right now. But I know what you're thinking at this very same moment. What if I don't start buying retro JRPGs right now and they keep going up in price? Yes, the odds of that happening are numerous, but ask yourself this, are you really willing to pay that much just to own a single game? Maybe if you have a lot of money and can afford it, sure, maybe go ahead, up to you. However, the truth is that by paying the prices some resellers ask for nowadays, you're only helping in the inflation of the market. Of course, you're not doing that on purpose, you're just a customer, a video game collector who wants to own a game. But sometimes, even if our actions seem harmless, we end up doing harm nonetheless. But that's up to you, like I said, if you want to overpay for JRPGs out there, be my guest, no one's gonna stop you. In any case, this is a very gray area, so let's move on. Another piece of advice that I have is to keep looking. A good treasure hunter doesn't give up after one or two fruitless locations. You might find that particular JRPG for a better price if you just keep on trying, if you just keep on looking. This probably seems like an obvious piece of advice, but you have no idea how many collectors just lose their patience immediately and pay off outrageous prices for a game. And I know it hurts to let go of a JRPG that you only found in that one store. It is nowhere, not even online, just there. But is it really that urgent for you to own it right there, right now, as if you absolutely can't live without it? Now, it's not like I don't understand how you feel. In my 12 years or so of RPG collecting, I've missed some opportunities as well. JRPGs that I only found in one place and for a punishing price, so I didn't buy them. Years later, I'm still looking for them and I can't find them cheaper than when I saw them back then. So yeah, I get it too. I know what that's like. Am I, however, beating myself up every day for that? No, of course not, because collecting is a hobby, a passion perhaps, but certainly not an obsession. So if you've already looked in lots of places, lots of stores, the marketplace online, some websites, etc., and that one store is still the only one that has that game, well, if you're dying to own it and it's not crazy expensive, then yes, go ahead and pay what they're asking for, though it might be a good idea to try to negotiate the price, of course. Another great piece of advice I have is to trade stuff. Sure, most stores always end up getting the better end of the deal and they take your games for trade at a laughable value. But what if you originally paid laughable amounts of money for them? Say you found one of those games stores take at $5 in trade, but you only paid $1 at a flea market or a thrift store, I don't know. Well, you might be able to give your wallet a break and end up paying way less for that particular JRPG you were looking for. This is a piece of advice that I will only follow myself if the price of the JRPG I want isn't already ridiculous. No amount of trades will justify overpaying for it. Much to my contempt, I'd rather just let it go. Now, because of the pandemic, some of us are still choosing to stay home as much as possible. We have no safe way to go to some retro stores or to even meet with other people to buy, sell, or trade them. What if you don't have a car and need to take the bus or the train full of people just to meet with the seller? In this situation, what I've been doing is focusing on other consoles, like I said before. I've been like this since I came back to Mexico, and now my PS4 collection has grown considerably. Precisely because I've been keeping track of PS4 JRPGs so far. I will be doing the same with PS3 or 360 if I didn't have most of the games that I want, but for you who doesn't, or for you who's just starting to get into JRPG collecting, I can't stress out enough that piece of advice. Just try to forget about the retro market right now, unless you're rich and don't mind overpaying for JRPGs, therefore inflating the market. Last but not least, to wrap things up, if your only goal is to play the game you want to buy, that is if you're not really interested in collecting, then trust me, if it's retro, there are several ways to play it. A lot of games have been ported, remastered, or re-released in different consoles over time. Try to do some research by watching my videos, for example, or merely by navigating through the internet. Ask other people if you want to. Find out where else can you play that JRPG you want. Sure, some of them are still exclusive to one or two consoles and they have no digital version whatsoever, and the physical releases are expensive. For those, it's okay to emulate. Nowadays, considering the obnoxious state of the retro market, it shouldn't be considered as illegal if you're only playing an old game, no one's making money out of it anymore. That's my point of view though. So that's my advice on JRPG collecting nowadays. Don't overpay anything, keep looking, or just focus on something else. Being a collector is supposed to be fun, and if you can't find any fun out of it, then it's no longer a hobby, no longer a passion, it's an obsession, and a bad one if you ask me. So I really hope you take my advice and try to have an open mind for this. I also hope you find a good way to play and or own all of those JRPGs you want. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!